A simple physics exercise accidentally showed human strength beyond expectation. The observation deck of the Galactic Academy station hummed with the usual sounds of various species going about their educational duties when Amy Carter walked into the advanced physics laboratory carrying nothing more than a standard-issue datapad and a water bottle. She had been at the Academy for 3 months now, as part of the human exchange program, and had grown used to the curious stares from her alien classmates who found everything about humans, strange from their unusual bone density to their bizarre need to consume water constantly. Today, Professor Zathera, a tall, elegant member of the Velthian species with crystalline skin that refracted light in prismatic patterns, had announced a simple practical exercise that would test their understanding of force resistance and endurance. The task seemed straightforward enough: hold a 5-kilogram weight at arm's length for as long as possible, while the computer measured muscle efficiency, energy expenditure, and overall performance. Amy watched as her classmates took their turns first with varying results. Kren, a stocky Bulgarian male with 4 arms, managed 47 seconds before his primary arms began shaking uncontrollably and he had to lower the weight with a grunt of exhaustion. Lissa, a graceful Andronian female whose species was known for their flexibility, held on for 32 seconds before her slender arm gave out, and she stepped back from the testing platform with an apologetic gesture toward the professor. One by one, each student attempted the exercise, and the results were carefully recorded by the Academy computer system, with the longest time being 1 minute, and 3 seconds achieved by a Korgath male whose species evolved on a high-gravity world. When Amy's name was called, she stepped up to the platform and took the weight in her right hand, extending her arm parallel to the floor as instructed. Professor Zathera initiated the timer and the room fell into the usual quiet observation mode that accompanied these practical tests. 30 seconds passed and Amy felt the mild burn beginning in her shoulder muscles, but it was nothing compared to the sensation she experienced during her morning workout routine back home. At 1 minute, the other students began exchanging glances as they realized the human was still holding steady, without any visible signs of strain. 2 minutes elapsed, and Professor Zathera leaned forward in her seat, her crystalline features reflecting her growing interest in what she was witnessing. Amy shifted her weight slightly from one foot to the other, and took a sip from her water bottle with her free hand, while still maintaining the weight at perfect arm extension. A ripple of shocked whispers spread through the laboratory. 3 minutes passed, and now every eye in the room was fixed on the human female who appeared to be doing nothing more strenuous than waiting for a transport shuttle. Kren leaned toward Lissa and whispered something in the common tongue about whether humans perhaps had cybernetic enhancements that the Academy medical scans had somehow missed. At 4 minutes, Professor Zathera stood up from her observation chair and walked closer to the testing platform, her analytical instruments scanning Amy's vital signs and muscle activity. The readings showed elevated heart rate and increased blood flow to the arm muscles, but nothing that indicated the human was approaching failure. 5 minutes came and went. Amy glanced at the timer display and then at her professor with a slightly confused expression, wondering if perhaps the exercise was supposed to involve something more challenging. By 6 minutes, a small crowd had gathered outside the laboratory viewports as word spread through the station that something unusual was happening in the physics practical class. Students from other species pressed their various facial features against the transparent aluminum, trying to catch a glimpse of the human who was apparently breaking some kind of endurance record at 7 minutes. Professor Zathera made a decision and spoke directly to Amy, asking if she was experiencing any significant discomfort or if she wished to stop the exercise. Amy considered the question honestly and replied that her shoulder was getting a bit tired, but it was not unbearable, and she could continue if the professor wanted more data. The crystalline professor exchanged a meaningful look with her teaching assistant before gesturing for Amy to continue. 8, 9, 10 minutes passed in succession. The weight remained perfectly level, never wavering more than a centimeter from its starting position. Lissa had pulled out her personal datapad and was frantically researching human physiology, trying to understand what biological mechanisms could possibly allow for this kind of sustained performance. What she found made her mandibles drop open in astonishment. Humans, it turned out, had evolved as persistence hunters on their homeworld. Their bodies were designed not for short bursts of extreme power like most predator species, but for the ability to continue moving, continue exerting force, continue pursuing prey, over vast distances and extended time periods. Their slow twitch muscle fibers, their efficient cooling systems, their unusual cardiovascular capacity, all of it pointed toward a species that succeeded not through overwhelming strength but through the simple ability to refuse to stop at 15 minutes. Professor Zythera called an end to the exercise. Amy lowered the weight with obvious relief, rolling her shoulder and flexing her fingers to restore full circulation. The professor announced to the class that they had just witnessed a practical demonstration of why human endurance capabilities were considered extreme outliers in the Galactic Biological Database. The other students gathered around Amy, with questions tumbling over each other in a dozen different languages. Could all humans do this, or was Amy particularly trained? How long could she have actually continued? What other physical capabilities did humans possess that seemed ordinary to them but extraordinary to everyone? Elsemi tried her best to answer, explaining that she was just a regular person who jogged a few times a week and did basic strength training. She mentioned casually that back on Earth, marathon runners could maintain running pace for over 2 hours, and that some endurance athletes competed in events lasting days. The classroom fell silent. Kren was the first to speak, asking slowly if Amy was suggesting that humans could run continuously for 2 hours. Amy nodded, confirming that yes, this was considered normal for trained athletes and that even casual runners could usually manage. An hour Lissa began calculating something on her datapad, her expression growing more disturbed with each number she entered. According to her calculations, if a human could maintain pursuit of prey at even a modest running pace for 2 hours, they could theoretically chase down nearly any known species in the galaxy, simply by following them until their target collapsed from exhaustion. It was a hunting strategy, so alien to most galactic species that it bordered on psychological warfare. The prey would run and escape thinking themselves safe, only to see the human appear again on the horizon, still coming, still moving with that terrifying patience. Run again, rest again, but the human would appear once more. Eventually, the prey would have no energy left to flee, and the human would simply walk up and claim their prize. Professor Zythera nodded, slowly. Acknowledging Lisa's calculations as essentially correct, she explained to the class that this was indeed how early humans hunted on their homeworld. Before they developed advanced tools and weapons, they would select an animal, track it for hours or even days, and follow it at a steady pace until it could no longer run. The room absorbed this information with a mixture of fascination and primal unease. Amy stood there feeling suddenly very self-conscious about the way her classmates were looking at her, as if seeing her for the first time, not as a friendly exchange student but as an apex predator wearing a pleasant smile. She tried to lighten the mood by joking that humans mostly use their endurance for boring things now, like running on machines that went nowhere, or competing to see who could suffer through exercise the longest. But the joke did not land quite right. Later that evening, Amy found herself in the station commissary sitting with Lissa and a few other students who had been in the physics class. The conversation had shifted to other human capabilities, and Amy found herself describing things she had never thought twice about. Yes, humans could regulate their body temperature through sweating, which allowed them to function in extreme heat. Yes, they could consume a wide variety of potential toxins and digest them without harm, including alcohol, caffeine, and capsaicin. Yes, their healing factor meant they could recover from injuries that would permanently disable most other species. Yes, they could function effectively on minimal sleep for extended periods when necessary. With each revelation, her alien friends looked more amazed and more disturbed. Kren finally asked the question that seemed to be on everyone's mind. If humans were this naturally dangerous, why were they so friendly and social? Why did they form bonds with other species and work toward cooperation instead of domination? Amy thought about it for a moment before answering. She explained that maybe it was because humans knew what it was like to struggle. They had spent millions of years as relatively weak creatures who succeeded through cooperation, persistence, and the refusal to give up. They learned early that working together was better than working alone, that patience and determination could overcome raw strength, that the ability to keep going when everything hurt was valuable, not just in hunting but in building relationships, solving problems, and creating things that mattered.